Mental Maps is brought to you by Well. Well is a virtual holistic mental health service, providing psychiatric evaluations, holistic interventions, and when needed, medication management. For more information, check out Well at www.arukawell.co. That's www.arukawell.co. Welcome back to Mental Maps. As always, I hope this finds you well no matter what season of life you're in. Whether you're listening to us on a podcast, you're checking this video out on YouTube, I'm so grateful that you're here. And today I think I've got a pretty interesting topic that's very applicable to your life in whatever way you find it, right? If you listen to this show as it posts, we are currently preparing for the holiday season here in the West, right? Thanksgiving is this week. And then for the rest of the world, the holiday season really cranks up in the next week, whether you're preparing for Hanukkah or Christmas or New Year's or whatever that looks like, right? This is just a time of celebration, but it also brings in a lot of intensity, right? And I was recently talking with some people and they had recommended you should do a podcast on family dynamics and holidays. And I've discussed on here before, maybe like a little bit of tips and tricks or different things, but I've never went into the concept of family dynamics, right? And so I thought, that's podcast worthy. And so that's kind of how we got to this experience today, right? So what we're going to do is talk about why the holiday season, right, can be really challenging. Then we're going to talk about what it looks like to have the family dynamic component within it, right? Family being not only like your interfamily, but people you consider your family, right? And then we're also going to go into some like tips and tricks to kind of navigate the holiday season so that you can get the best time out of this, right? Because ultimately, whether you're a super festive person or not, you want to have a good day, right? You want to have a good time. And that's kind of the goal of this, right? So first and foremost, I think we have to start with why are the holidays so hard, right? What is the reason that we find ourselves in such a challenging place? In the West, it's definitely like EPA, right? But we see this across the world in other areas too, where the holiday season brings in a lot of pressure, right? We know that, there's concepts within consumerism and some of those things that really generate some stress for people and finances and some of those things. And that cannot be understated, right? That's definitely a driver in it. But when you pull that back and you move into the concept of just the day and the time and the gatherings, for many people, that's where big issues lie. If you were to just Google like family boundaries and holidays, it is wild the stuff that comes up, right? And it goes across all domains, right? There's academic literature, there's blogs from therapists, there's, recommendations on business sites and across all domains. The concept of family boundaries and the holidays are a really hot topic. And I think one of the reasons for that is because it can impact a day or a time like nothing else, right? You are moving into a time where you're wanting to celebrate and enjoy an experience. And at the same time, you have these challenges that can occur with other people, right? And one of the reasons that happens is the dynamics of the relationships of the people you're with, right? We're going to call them family dynamics, but ultimately it's friend dynamics. It's whoever you are spending this time with. These dynamics emerge and ultimately can rear its head in a lot of really challenging ways, right? And so ultimately, what is that? What is a family dynamic issue? Family dynamics in themselves are patterns that emerge within interactions, right? Meaning that the more as we interact with people, a pattern will begin to emerge. And those patterns will then dictate what's happening in the relational context, right? We see this in families, we see this in friend groups, you see this in work settings. The relational dynamics are paramount, right? At the same time, specifically within like families, whether it be nuclear family or extended family, friends, whatever, it's really based on roles, right? All of us play roles in our life. We have a place. There's stuff that we're doing. Our interactions change the dynamics in certain ways. And as we're doing this, our roles are really impacting what's happening. Where I think a lot of issues emerge in the holidays is that a holiday season creates an opportunity for you to be in a role, right? However, it may be a role that you haven't been in a long time, right? As you move back to go see people you haven't seen in years, right? Or maybe at least a year, 6 months, whatever, you're put into a role that's not your regular rhythm. At the same time of that, other people around you are expecting you to be in that role, which then leads to expectations that we'll talk about shortly. But at the end of the day, truly believe a major driver for a lot of the holiday challenges for people, especially with family and friends, is the role that we play and ultimately how people receive that role, right? On an overarching level, a major driver of the holiday challenge is the pressure, right? We know that everyone desires that Hallmark movie, right? Everyone desires the perfect day, the perfect experience, snowing, whatever. It's like randomly snowing in the desert because that's what you believe it is. Like that is kind of what you're looking for, right? You're looking for great conversation or all the different things, right? Now, remember, not everybody has the same view of what an awesome holiday season looks like, even though all movies kind of look the same. Everybody's a little bit different. But at the end of the day, there is a pressure to make the experience look just like that, right? At the same time, you enter that place, you enter that pressure of the season in a role that you're in and expected to go that route, right? So how do you navigate this? Like, what do you do, right? I think we all can think of a holiday that was kind of chaotic, right? We've all had those times where it's just like that didn't go maybe the way we wanted it to. Sometimes it's just the little stuff. Other times it's like EPA, Clark Griswold, burnt turkey kind of situation, right? But at the end of the day, we all have had those times. And so as you begin this holiday season, you may be asking yourself, how can I navigate this? And I think there's really 6 tips that we're going to talk about today that can help you navigate this, navigate the role that you're in and the dynamic, and also navigate this season itself, right? So we're going to start with remembering this is a season, right? If you're in the West, it's kind of started already. If you're not in the West, it kind of emerges over the next week or two. And so this is a season, right? And ultimately, how you prepare yourself will decide how you show up on that day, right? Whether it's a family dinner, it's a gathering, whatever that looks like, how you navigate this whole season will decide how you show up. So if you spend the holiday season running around like a maniac, really intense, negative Nancy, frustrated at stuff, worried about all the things, it's how you're going to probably show up, right? And ultimately, that's going to dictate the interactions. It's going to dictate your role, and it's going to dictate what the outlook of your holiday experience looks like, right? At the same time, if you spend your holiday season trying to enjoy the celebration, finding yourself being in the moment, not becoming overwhelmed by the worry that kind of exists there, not getting caught up in the consumeristic concepts of it, you very well may show up to that day in a lot better mental health space and can be your best version of yourself on that day, right? Also remembering that for many situations, the experience is more than just a day, right? More times than not in many family gatherings or friend gatherings, it's more than just a 3-hour experience, right? The people you're going to spend time with, you may get more than a couple hours with, maybe numerous days. And so just know that as every hour passes, if it didn't go the way you want it to, you have that opportunity to recalibrate and reset. So no one says that just because one bad thing occurred, you're kind of stuck in. This is a season, right? Allow that season to be the way you want it to be and fuel you rather than take from you, right? The second thing is you've got to set realistic expectations, right? As we talked about before, everybody wants that Hallmark movie, but ultimately, Hallmark movies are ultimately a Hallmark movie, right? The chance of it all going perfect is pretty low, right? I do a lot of adventuring, and one of the things you like to say on an adventure is it's not an adventure unless something goes wrong, right? You hope it's something small, but ultimately something's going to go wrong, right? And in this world, something may go off, right? You may lose a gift, or something may burn that you're cooking, or your flight may get delayed, or whatever that looks like, right? And so being able to set a realistic expectation of what you want that experience to look like. At the same time, setting a realistic expectation on the dynamic, right? Knowing what role you play is imperative, but also knowing what role you're wanting other people to play will change the entire way you interact with people. If you show up to a gathering or an experience not knowing the role you're in, you're probably going to find yourself not achieving someone else's expectations, which leads to problems, right? At the same time, if you show up and you have these expectations of other people and they're not meeting it because they don't know it, man, what are you doing? Right. So we got to know what roles we're looking for people to play. And maybe that uncomfortable thought or feeling or experience that emerges is not because the holiday season sucks or the dinner is terrible, but because maybe you put an expectation on another person and that person is just not in that place right now. Right. And that's okay. But putting the expectation on that role leads to you expecting them to be in that pattern, and they may not be ready to be in that pattern, right? Remember, the holidays are an opportunity for you to be in a role that maybe you haven't been in a while. Maybe you don't want to be in that role, which is a whole other component that we'll talk about later. But at the end of the day, if we're putting the expectation on that role, it's going to lead to some pretty heavy stuff. So set realistic expectations for the season and the day and for other people. Right. The third one is know your contribution to the experience, right? We have to know where we're at and where we're coming in. As I said before, wherever you go, there you are. And so ultimately you are impacting the energy and the dynamic of whatever you're in, right? Whether it's in the car, whether it's in the family dinner, whether it's unwrapping presents, whatever it is, right? You have a contribution there. So know where you're at. Check your thoughts. Is an expectation problem. Do you find yourself just looking at it through a really dark, negative lens? Ultimately, this experience isn't forever. Holidays will be over. And if you're just in a place where it's really heavy, know that you're in that place and being able to challenge that of this isn't going to be forever, right? And try to find that present happiness within that. But know your contribution, right? When you get into that world of the contribution, then you begin to recognize, is there conflict emerging in the family dynamic component, right? One of the biggest challenges we see, especially here in the West, but I'm sure it's in other places too, is that the concept of family conflict, right? There's so much family conflict, primarily based on stuff that people are never going to fix, right? Whether it's political issues or social views or whatever that is, we live in a very divisive time. And when you move back into these places, when you go back to someone hanging out with some of these people, they may expect you to be in a role. Maybe you've changed your thoughts. Maybe you're not. Maybe you haven't been around people who think the way that that person thinks. There's a lot of components in this, right? So know your contribution in it. But the second part of that is, what kind of conversation are we having? I can promise you there is not a single dinner table that's happening, that'll happen throughout this season that's going to fix our world's problems. It's not happening. It just can't, right? This is a wildly divisive time. If you're in the West, there's a lot of chaos here. If you're in other parts of the world, there's a lot of chaos there. This is the world, right? There is no conversation that is going to happen that will completely solve all of the problems, right? So if it emerges, no matter what the viewpoint is of that other person, being able to check this conversation. One of the favorite things I like to say in my own head, and I've said it on here before too, is this conversation attempting to discuss a problem or solve a problem? Right? If I'm ultimately just discussing a problem, this is wasted energy, right? It's gone. That's over, right? If it's attempting to solve a problem, which some people could say that some of those discussions can be, is the solution realistic and do you play a part in it? Right? So if I'm thinking about this is what this person should be doing to fix this thing, is that person going to listen to me? Do I have a place at the table on that? And if not, maybe that's not the conversation we need to be having. Remember, this is a season. It's not going to last forever. So how you choose to spend your time, whether that's 6 hours, 12 hours, 48 hours, whatever, you've got to make that decision on what that looks like. Is the stuff you're spending time talking about worth discussing? For all the pressure, especially in the West, that we put on the holiday season, we lose and dilute so much of it solely based on discussing stuff that will have no solution. And I think that can be one of the greatest challenges and ultimately one of the greatest downfalls of the holiday season. Is what you're spending your time talking about with the people around you actually worth the discussing? Because remember, you're going to leave that day and go back to what you're doing. So as you find those conversations emerging at the dinner table or around the fire or whatever that is, if you're in the Hallmark movie, whatever that is, check it. Is this worth it? And if it's not, divert it, right? You can change it. Ultimately, maybe you're in the role of always being that person of negative and all, it's all terrible, whatever that is. You don't have to be. Maybe you change the role. Maybe you change what's being talked about. Is there something worth discussing? Lastly, or the fifth one that we'll discuss is the concept of gratitude, right? I had a buddy that just spoke on this, and I think it's something that is so, so important in that gratitude is imperative, right? We know that gratitude is the solution for many concepts of anxiety, right? For ultimately sadness, maybe not as much, but for anxiety, gratitude and anxiety just can't coexist with one another. And so are you finding gratitude in that moment? Right. And you can go all the way to the basic level, right? Of gratitude of if you got a roof over your head, gratitude, I got a roof over my head. Gratitude that whatever it is, right? Finding the gratitude in the moment, right? And if you can live in that, it will definitely change the way you view the day. I try to do some gratitude stuff every single morning when I wake up, right? Some days I don't want to get up early and go to the gym. Doesn't seem really fun to me. But man, I just say to myself, I'm grateful that I can get up and go train today, right? Whatever that looks like for you, right? If I'm really frustrated at work, grateful that I got work. Now, does that make my day awesome? Sometimes, but not always. But finding gratitude throughout this holiday season is important. And finding gratitude within the relational dynamic that you're in, right? Whether you like it or not, you got people in your life, and those people have a place there. And ultimately, even if you believe internally you'd be better without them, there are people who would do anything to have those people in your life, right? Gratitude for the people in your life. You don't have to like them, don't have to enjoy it, but you have to be grateful for it, right? And I think when you're grateful for it, you can at least enjoy the experience in that moment, right? And then lastly would be have a sense of humor, right? I heard Matthew McConaughey one time say he wants his default emotion to be humor. And I love that, right? Like what is the default emotion that emerges during chaos? It is hard to get really worked up when you find humor in it, right? How many times have things got really cranked up and then ultimately something funny happens and then it's all kind of decompressed, right? Keep your sense of humor throughout this time. This is an adventure. In adventures, things can go wrong. If my default emotion is humor and I've set realistic expectations, man, it's going to be okay. Where is your humor at? And this comes to that point of remembering this is a season, right? Being able to fuel yourself in a way that allows you to have that sense of humor. I think one of the things that we don't talk enough about when it comes to our mindsets is what we're fueling ourselves with. Remember, we talked a lot about that on the brain gas tank episode, which we talked about. Man, I've probably done that a couple of years now. But what we consume will dictate what comes out of us, right? And so ultimately, if I want to be grateful, like tip 5, and I want to have a sense of humor, like tip 6, then I need to be consuming things that help me do that, right? I'm not going to be able to do that watching the 24-hour news cycle. I'm not going to be able to do that scrolling on social media, doing the shoulds and the coulds and the wants. I just can't. It's impossible. The brain just cannot do that, right? So find the things for you that help you be grateful and find the things for you that help you have a sense of humor because ultimately things are going to happen. And no matter what role you're in and within your relational dynamic, you can change the outcome solely with those two things. If you keep gratefulness and a sense of humor, I don't care what role you're in, you will change the energy of wherever you're at. It is super hard for someone else to be in a bad mood when you are living out of gratefulness and a sense of humor. It's just hard. I think it's almost like convicting, right? That around you is just very like a state of dissonance. So find that gratefulness. So to kind of recap this stuff, right? One, remember this is a season where whatever you got going on, right? This is a season, and in this season, how you prepare yourself will decide how you show up, right? Whether that's personally, right? Like within your own mental health, with your own physical health, but then also with what you're fueling yourself with. Set realistic expectations, right? Which are really, really important as you navigate the season, setting expectations with the family roles, not only that you're in, but within the other people, right? Because many times A lot of our problems are because we're setting expectations on people that they don't even know they have. Know your contribution, right? So know where your place in this, right? Know the energy that you bring, know the way that you're viewing it, and really check how you're viewing things around you because you're contributing to whatever is happening around you. Are you discussing in these conversations that you're having with people things that are worthwhile? If there is a problem, is there actively a solution that you can do it? If not, focus on the positive stuff or focus on good conversation, right? There's nothing wrong with talking about hot topics and social components. But if we're attempting to tell people what to do or all those things, man, nothing's really helpful. So if we find ourselves in these very hot topic components, sometimes you can divert it, and sometimes you can just listen. And sometimes just listening in itself is the best way to get through that experience. Maintaining gratitude and a sense of humor is paramount in this time, right? So making sure you keep that going. Fuel yourself daily with gratitude and humor kind of concepts. And then that allows you to have those defaults. And ultimately, those defaults will be the way that you view the world. So I hope that as we kind of unpack this a little bit, right, you can think to yourself, what is the role that you play within the relational dynamics of your life? Maybe there's certain relationships that emerge as we talked about this today where you're like, yeah, that's where my challenges are, right? Take some time to figure this out. Work on this, right? If you feel like you need to talk to somebody, there's therapists across the country, right, that do this kind of work. And if not, friends, whatever that looks like, people you trust that you can work through this stuff with as you prepare for the holiday season. But know your role. Make sure that you check your role, right? And if you don't know your role and maybe you're finding yourself like, I don't know what's going on, ask. There's nothing wrong with being like, what's your expectation of me when I show up at the family gathering this time? And sometimes you may be kind of shocked at what people expect from you, right? So being able to do that, work to be able to keep your mindset where you need it to be. And I think ultimately you will find that the holiday season can be a time of celebration and festiveness and good food and drink and whatever else you got going on, right? So definitely try these things out. I think they can be very helpful to you. I hope you guys have an incredible holiday season, right? In whatever way that looks for you. Enjoy time with family, friends, whatever that is. I definitely don't want to undervalue the heaviness that occurs in the holidays, right? We know there's a lot of family dynamic issues that can be very traumatic, right? And we know that even seeing people can bring a lot of that up. And I think as you listen to this, if that emerged for you, right? Man, reach out to somebody. Don't go back to that the conflictual problem again and expect things to be different. Spend some time figuring out what it is that's going on, right? We know that there's a lot of heaviness that can occur in the holidays that's way more than just the turkey burning, right? It's some really big things. And so I'm very aware of that. And I think that if you're having that, definitely reach out to someone. But ultimately, those 6 things that we talked about today may be helpful in how you navigate those experiences, right? Have an incredible season. Thanks for tuning in and good luck for the holidays.